Can VR still revolutionize gaming? Or has it? Hey guys, today we're going to talk about Half-Life Alyx and all of that discussion revolving VR, AR, mixed reality, and all of that. So I was watching Apple Vision Pro release a couple of days ago. You all have seen that. Lots of videos out there on YouTube with people wearing it outside and testing it out. And it sounds like a good leap forward for VR and mixed reality and all of that. And then I was thinking about that, and naturally I thought about Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life Alyx was released in 2020 by Valve, and it's yet another entry to the one of the biggest franchises of all in all the world of gaming, especially when we're talking about PC gamers, but not just that. Hey guys, it's Harry. I've been a game designer and producer for the past 10 years. I've worked with games from mobile to PC. I've seen things that work or doesn't work in game productions, and I'm here to offer my insights and perspective to talk about games and development. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel below, leave a like on the video because that helps a lot growing the channel. We're trying to release several videos a week. And yeah, turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Half-Life 1 revolutionized so many things in the games industry and the way people played games back in the day. And it's one of Valve's most valuable properties. Together with Dota, together with Counter-Strike, everything started with Half-Life. And now we have Half-Life Alyx. And let me say that Alyx was a big and bold and risky project. Because before that, we had seen just a couple of big experiences like the Batman Arkham VR, but it was actually not well received. It was more like an experiment than a full-fledged game per se. And a lot of people were expecting that big, full-blown game with bold story and mechanics and combat, to play in VR. And the market didn't have that quite a lot. So Half-Life Alyx came in 2020 to really fill in that gap, and you can see Valve staff talking about that. They receiving feedback from players, when the HTC Vive was released, and not a lot of AAA experiences were present there for you to play. So actually Valve risked one of their biggest franchises, if not their biggest franchise, with a VR game. That could have been very wrong. That could have gone very wrong and badly received from players. So it was a bold move from Valve, but gladly, fortunately for them, it was considered a masterpiece. It was highly praised by critics and players, and is still today considered probably the best VR experience you can have. And it's great to see that. I love to see when companies risk something to release a game that is innovative, that is new, that is bold, right? For a new platform or a new way to play, a new genre. It's great to see that because we see many times that the big companies, the big game companies, they rarely risk much with their new releases. Many times it's just about continuing the flow, doing what they know already works. It's the next Assassin's Creed game. It's yet another Star Wars game that they know it's going to hit the market. It's probably going to sell a lot. And there's nothing wrong per se with those games. Those are great games. But it's great to see when companies try to bring something new, try to advance the market forward. Games are still such a new medium. There's still so much to do, so much to explore, new technologies, new ways of playing. When we see that old games like chess and Go and a lot of games like that, they are so good that they evolved over time and they are still played today after centuries and millennia. It is great to see that when we try to advance the video games industry forward, trying to bring those experiences that can last, that can last for decades and who knows, even centuries. So I already respect Valve a lot. I think they do a lot of things right already. And Half-Life Alyx just shows that one more time. Not only because of the high quality of the game for a new platform, a new device, a new way to play that complemented the Half-Life experience so well in Alyx, but also for the risk in the technology side. And Alyx was released in 2020. It sold more than 2 million copies in its first year. That for a VR game is incredible. You know, it's a new standard for VR experiences. But it's been 4 years since its release, and VR hasn't become mainstream yet. And then comes a discussion. As I said, I was watching Apple Vision Pro videos and imagine what the future could be for that. You know, people going outside, walking on the streets, wearing the glasses, you know, the headset. And I was asking myself that question: can VR or mixed reality still revolutionize gaming? Because even 4 years after Alyx, and you know, the Oculus Rift was released in 2016, so it's 8 years since that release, VR hasn't become mainstream yet. You don't see a lot of people playing games on VR, maybe a lot of friends of yours, depending on the country, depending where you are in the world. Maybe you know a lot of people that own a VR headset, but that is not common in many parts of the world. But no, it's still so much more common that people are still playing on their PCs or consoles or phones today, or handheld devices on their Switch, on a train or whatever. But VR hasn't become mainstream yet. And the question is, can it? Can it still become the main type of experience that we play games on? Okay, so I have just a couple of thoughts in terms of what would it take for VR to become mainstream, and analyze a couple of aspects of the industry, of the market, to see why that hasn't happened yet. And naturally, there's the technology side. The technology is arguably still not good enough yet. You know, the devices are still evolving year over year, but you still have a couple of common issues with the graphics and the motion and the smoothness of the movement. All of that is required for a mainstream experience, because when you play on a screen, it's okay if the frame rate is a little bit higher, a little bit lower. That doesn't interfere with your experience quite as much, because when you are wearing a VR headset, you are immersed in the world, in the virtual world, and your brain works differently. Your brain tries to think that that is the actual reality. So if the graphics are not good enough, and I don't mean realistic, you can have stylized cartoonish graphics, but good enough in terms of the rendering, in terms of how it's rendered on your device, and in the sound, in the motion, you will feel weird after a while with playing. So that's a very common issue that a lot of VR headsets still, especially low-end ones, still face. And there's also the game design aspect of things, right? Because when you think about VR, almost always you're talking about a first-person experience. So what about the other games? What about the other types of experience? Top-down, third-person, or whatever. There are so many ways that you can play games. And when you think about VR, first-person is the way to go, is the go-to experience. And that's great. Maybe it's the perfect way to experience a first-person game, but you have several other experiences as well that they don't translate quite well to VR. Or you theoretically can have a third-person character in your VR experience, but that's not the same, right? That's not the way it is supposed to work. It wasn't designed to play stuff like that. So people have to get some workarounds to create that type of experience that many times feels much more natural in a regular device, on a regular screen, 2D screen. So in thinking about that, a lot of games, let's think about the biggest games out there. You have Dota 2, you have League of Legends, or Fortnite, or PUBG, or God of War, and GTA 6. And how would those games play out, right? These are games that are still going to survive. They'll continue to be playing throughout the several years to come. And VR doesn't accommodate that so well. So that's one very strong market argument for VR not to take over, at least in the next few years, because those types of games would lose strength. but they already have a lot of investment, a lot of player base playing those games. So it is unlikely that in the next few years, 2, 3, 5 years, VR is going to become so mainstream that those games lose strength in their communities, in their genres, in the market overall. Because initially we thought that VR would be this great revolution to happen very fast because, nowadays technology is so fast, and in a couple of years become the single main experience that people would be choosing to play. But that is, we have seen, right? Oculus Rift in 2016, HalfLife Alyx in 2020, and now we're 2024, and still you don't see a lot of VR headsets on the streets, and you don't go to your friend's house mostly to play VR games. So that is still ongoing. We see a lot of companies, Meta and now Apple and several other companies, PlayStation, actively and massively investing on those devices and in that market, but still doesn't sound like we're going to have this big revolution overnight. Okay, but who knows? After a couple of years, that might actually happen. The VR headsets might become so cheap, so affordable, and so comfortable to use even outside that we'll be really living that kind of science fiction reality that we see on movies, that we've read on books. And I don't know, what do you think? That would be interesting, wouldn't it? But HalfLife Alyx also nailed the design of the experience around VR. And it's great to see that they had to resolve several problems in terms of the mechanics and VR design and the research and development that they put into those things. If you see the research they did on the controls, you have several different ways of moving your character and playing smoothly, even in the middle of combat.
Those virtual footsteps you see are a visual representation of our pathing system. Initially, we tried repurposing our existing nav mesh system, which is the same one our AI uses to navigate. In practice, however, this proved to be too rigid. The nav mesh system pre-computes all possible movement paths, and while that's efficient, it didn't support the locomotion and interaction desires of our players or our designers, who were building very dynamic environments. So this led us to our next series of tests, using the well-known A-star system to build routes. Our A-star-based teleport pathing approach was successful in that it freed players from having to micromanage their teleport targeting. But ultimately, it was too computationally intensive, so we had to explore more efficient solutions.
In combat, the player's focus is, as you would expect, on the enemy and not on the environment. Playtesting has shown us that players' teleport targeting becomes frantic and imprecise in these situations. And even under these conditions, our system needs to match player expectations. Typically, players want to stay in contact with the floor and move out of danger, not jump up and down on all the objects in their environment in the middle of a battle. Floor prioritization achieves this. Another way that our teleportation system achieves reliable results, even when used quickly and imprecisely, is by moving players partially along their desired path in certain cases. In the heat of battle, players focus on quickly repositioning themselves for tactical advantage. Instead of requiring the player to precisely specify a valid teleport destination, partial movement moves the player as close as possible to the desired location along the valid movement path. As a result, players don't have to shift their mental focus away from their enemy in order to move during battle.
All right, that was it. What about you guys? Do you think that in the next few years, everybody's going to be wearing headsets outside and VR is going to be the mainstream experience for games? Leave in the comments below the most interesting or crazy experience that you had with VR and what games are you looking forward to play with your VR headset. That's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I catch you guys next time.